Hey, everybody, and welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. This is Katie Weaver, and I am here with my partner in crime and sister Christy Brower. Hello.
Hello, excited to be here. Can't wait for this case.
I know this is a really fun one. I'm loving it.
Mhm.
Very cool. Well, before we dive into this super fun case we have today, let's check in. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I got to tell you, I'm super lucky because my wife has discovered keto baking. And so I've been living large all weekend on super low carb, really delicious stuff. She's having a blast. She's like, I think we should make this. We went to the store 2 different times yesterday to get stuff so she can make some different things. So that's been really fun. Lots of fall stuff. We just had, she just made pumpkin cheesecake muffins that are two
Nice.
carbs per muffin.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I'm super lucky. So I'm doing great.
I happen to
How are
know
you
that
doing?
those muffins are on their way to my house here in a little while.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So our family has we have a tradition that started when we were kids with our grandparents that once one night a week we choose a night that we all get together and have a meal together and play cards or do something.
Yeah.
And it happens to be card night and I'm hosting this week. So yeah, we're doing casseroles. So
Yes, we are. We are.
it's cold, it's comfort food time for sure. So
Mm.
anyway, so
Mhm.
everybody's gonna be coming up here in a little while so that we can play cards. It's a way to keep caught up and in touch and to be able to see the kids frequently and just to see each other. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we've been doing this for, gosh, it feels like a million years.
Yeah. Most of our lives.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm excited. So I know your
Me
muffins are
too.
coming this way. I am
Yeah.
going to make a mock shepherd's pie.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice.
So mock because it'll have mashed cauliflower instead of mashed potatoes because we're all low carby. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, that'll be awesome. Well, we have much consternation here because Mars, my youngest, is having her senior pictures this week.
Oh boy.
So we are in the throes of where should we have them done? What is she going to wear? And oh my God, all of that.
Yeah.
It's big doings.
I can only imagine knowing Mars. She has a lot of opinions.
Mhm.
She also has a
Well,
really hard time making a choice.
mm. She's one of those kids that wants you to weigh in, but then will immediately shoot you down. And so it's so hard to throw anything out there because whatever you say, she's definitely going to be like, well, I don't want to do that. Finally, today I said, I am worn out on suggestions. I have nothing else to say. But mom, I have to make a decision. Well, then you should make one.
You're a senior in high school. It's time to start making these.
We're really in that senior stuff. She took the SAT last week
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're Jostens is coming next week to, buy the cap and gown and all that stuff. We're really in that period. It's
Wow.
senior year, man. Wild.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
And your
Yeah.
last
And my last one, I know. I almost don't have any more kids in high school. No more dances. No more dealing with our ridiculous school district. I'm not sad.
Yeah, no. No,
I'm
no.
I I could only be, compare it to when my last kid got out of grade school because holy hell, grade school's a lot of work for parents. Oh,
Mm. Oh, yeah.
and I had 3 in grade school at the same time,
Mm.
which was an hour and a half of reading every night. And, not that I'm not willing to invest in my kids, don't get me wrong, but wow, having 3 kids in grade school is a lot of work. That's
Well,
a lot
yeah.
of room parties and costume days and science activities and projects that kids can't possibly do on their own. And, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, of course, having 3
Definitely.
in college will be a lot of papers for me to help with. But you know what? I won't complain. Having 3 kids in college will feel like a hell of an honor, I think. So,
Oh, yeah.
you
That'd
know,
be awesome.
I have 2 in college now. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Well, our case today happened 140 years ago. This is a
Mhm.
very, very old cold case. And we learned of this case on our cemetery tour. And so we have some footage of our trip there, as well as some footage we'll share along the way here of earlier times of this area so that you guys can get a feel for it. This is the case of Lizzie King. And you know what's so wild? As I was researching this case and I typed in Lizzie King into a search bar, I found a Lizzie King in New York City that murdered her boyfriend right around the same time that all of this happened on the other side of the country in
That's
Custer,
so
Idaho.
weird.
Isn't that
Wow.
crazy?
Super
Yeah,
weird.
I thought
If
that
your
was so
name is Lizzie
wild.
King, please don't kill your boyfriend.
Right.
Just saying. There's
Well,
been
and you
enough
type in
death
Lizzie,
around.
right. And then, of course, Lizzie Borden comes up. And moral of the story, don't go by Lizzie. If your name's Elizabeth, Liz is where it's at, you
Yeah.
know.
If you're a Lizzie, just don't kill anybody. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, there you go. And maybe don't name your kids Lizzie. I don't know. It's just a thought. But anyway, so this actually happened in Bonanza in Custer County, Idaho.
Yeah.
Bonanza was once upon a time, way back in the late 1800s, it was a gold mining town, a gold rush town that
Yeah.
was booming for a while. Now, when we went through there, there was practically nothing. You know,
Right.
these are ghost towns now. And of course, we'll share some footage, but uh, Bonanza is deep, deep in the mountains. And when we drove up there, we were so far out of service that we didn't have cell phone service for probably 5 hours.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's very remote. And when we got there, there's two cemeteries at Bonanza, which is kind of hard to imagine, except for that they had a cemetery for people they didn't want buried in the main cemetery because of the way they died.
Right. The bad
So,
kids got put up on the hill.
yep, the bad kids had to get buried somewhere else. They weren't welcome to be buried with apparently the good kids. Yeah. So these were people that were murdered. They didn't get to be buried where everybody else got to be buried.
And that seems weird to me because it's not like, well, we'll talk about it, but I mean, just in general, being murdered doesn't seem like it's actually your fault. Therefore, why are you
Right.
being punished in death for it? But
Right? But Bonanza was a very rough place.
yeah,
This is a place where people died frequently from all kinds of ailments that now you would not even think twice about. You wouldn't even go to the doctor for.
right.
But then,
Like blood
they
poisoning
died
from
from,
injuries, just
yep,
cuts and things that would
yep.
you would die of blood poisoning. When we talk about the Bonanza Cemetery, you'll be really surprised about
Hmm.
the way that people died up there.
Yeah. But there was just no medical.
No.
There was also a lot of crime because there was a lot of money being made. And
Yeah.
so you would, get some gold together or some gold dust together and sell it. And somebody would be around the corner ready for that. And
Yep.
so there was a lot of problems with crime. There was a lot of problems with prostitution. There was
Mhm.
also a lot of problems with poverty because people came to these areas thinking that they were going to hit it big. And if or when they didn't, or they lived too high on the hog and lost their money, there was a lot of suicide and just a lot of poverty and problems.
Oh, yeah. It was a rough place and a rough time to be there.
Mhm,
Well,
for
and
sure.
one thing that, I remember reading about this area was that people who were wanted by the law in other places had a tendency to go to places like Bonanza because it was so remote, they wouldn't be found, and then maybe they could hit
Yes.
it big. So we're
Yep.
talking about a lot of criminals there anyway, just,
Mhm.
for the reason
Yeah.
that they could hide there, and you can see why when you can't have cell service for 5 hours to get there.
Right. I mean, it is that remote, and frankly, it was a fairly scary drive to get there,
Yeah,
but
it's not a great road even now in 2020.
mhm. So the peak population was around 600, which, now would seem like not much, but this is a very small area. There were people kind of on top of people there.
Mhm.
And it was settled in 1877, and by 1925, it was basically gone.
Wow.
Didn't take very long for it to burn
Mhm.
out. But in the midst of this, a couple came to town. They were English, and the gentleman's name was Richard King. His wife's name was Agnes Elizabeth Lizzie King. She went by Lizzie. And Richard sold real estate. And Lizzie opened the Arcade Saloon and Yankee Fork Dance Hall. So she
Mm.
was kind of the maiden of the dance hall and the saloon,
Mhm.
and was well known by the men and well beloved by the men.
Mhm.
She was known as a golden beauty.
Oh,
And
okay.
there was an incident. They'd only been there for about a year, and Richard and a business associate got in a fight about some kind of a business something something, and Richard was shot and killed. And this is when I it's just so weird to me, but yes, she was not allowed to bury him in the local cemetery
Because he was murdered.
because he was murdered, or maybe because of the kind of people they were.
Hmm.
Anyway, he wasn't allowed to be buried there. And so there was the owner of the local hotel was a guy named Charles Franklin. And Charles Franklin had it bad for Lizzie, had it
Ah.
bad for her. And when her husband died, he really swooped in and helped her and did everything he could for her. And he fenced off a plot of land with room for himself to be buried and Charles and Lizzie so that they would all be buried together.
Mhm.
Again, a little strange, but maybe so. Or sorry, Richard and Lizzie. A little odd, but that's what he did. So they were spending a lot of time together. They were getting pretty close, and people in town thought, that they would end up together. I
Yeah.
think he thought they would end up together. He loved her,
Yeah.
and honestly would do anything for her. And that's kind of how things proceeded for just a little while. And then this other man came to town by the name of Robert Hawthorne, and he swept Lizzie off her feet. He was only in town for about a week, and they got married.
Ooh.
Totally
Yikes.
devastated Charles, who
Mm.
really loved Lizzie and thought that he would be there. He was there for her when her husband died. He was helping her with her business. He helped her bury her husband. He thought there was something there. And she blindsided him by just getting married. And so, they didn't know each other hardly at all, but she just married this guy out of the blue, which I can only imagine too. Charles felt like there was charlatan in town,
Yeah, that's
because
so
Lizzie
I
had
wanna give a
money.
little bit of read on this before we move forward.
Yeah.
First, I wanna say that Lizzie was really, really manipulative. She was just very good at manipulating men. She knew she could use her feminine wiles. That was why, her saloon was popular. It's why people, men particularly fell over themselves to help her. She was very intentional about that. It wasn't just, "Oh, she was this angel." No, she knew exactly what she was doing.
Right. We
She
had a
was
bit of a
using
Lori Vallow on our hands
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
right?
very much so. She was completely using Charles. She had no interest in him at all. But she needed help. She needed somebody, and she knew that she could play him and was doing it intentionally until it got to be a nuisance. Like things had resolved, husband's buried, she's fine, and she's sick of him because she doesn't
Mhm.
really have any interest in him.
Yeah.
And that's why she married the other guy, was just to cut it off right there because she was getting really tired of him. But I
Mhm.
really her energy is so manipulative, like, she's very much calculating this, planning this. This wasn't just an unfortunate incident. She totally planned and used him
Yeah.
knowing that she had no interest in being with him, but she was gonna get everything she could get out of him first.
Right. It's so sad for Charles because I feel like he was
It
truly
is.
just a really good guy.
Yes, but, I mean, how many times have we talked about men like this that are dumb
Yep.
as hell,
Mhm.
that, we're gonna say it, people don't like it when we say this, but, she was one of those women with a golden vagina,
Oh, yeah.
could get away
Oh,
with
yeah.
anything,
Yep.
and, he just, was desperate for her to love
Yep.
him, and so he would do anything, and it's just that this such a classic story because
Yep.
that really was she was just getting what she needed.
Yep. Yep. For sure. Very sad. Well, to go on with the story then, so Robert Hawthorne comes to town. We don't know where Robert Hawthorne was born. We don't know very much about him at all, actually. But there was a story in the Yankee Fork Herald from Bonanza City, Idaho in 1880. from the local newspaper that says August 14th, 1880, Robert Hawthorne and Mrs. Lizzie King, were married on the 5th day of August at the residence of the latter E.G. Carr, J.P. It's the first marriage of Yankee Fork. It was also known as the shortest marriage ceremony in Boise. Now, this is not considered to be Boise anymore, but anyway.
Wow. Yeah. That's an
Apparently,
interesting.
it was territory of Boise at the time.
Okay.
The marriage ceremony went as such. Have her? Yes. Have him? Yes. Married. Cost $2. That's how it
Wow.
went down.
So romantic.
Yes. So Charles is devastated, totally blindsided. These two move into a home together. And a week after the wedding, she doesn't show up to work. No one can find them. Somebody goes and checks on their home, and they're dead. They are both shot to death in their home. So, yeah. So here comes our hero, Charles Franklin, who, had already had his heart broken by Lizzie, and now she's dead. And he is furthermore devastated. He buries them both in those plots next to her husband, the land he gave up for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he leaves town. He just leaves town, brokenhearted, done. Leaves town. Several years later, he is found dead, not of foul play, in a lonely old cabin, like way out in the wilderness. And he is clutching Lizzie's photo in a gold locket. So they take him back in. They don't bury him there. They bury him in Bonanza. There's no room in the little tiny cemetery he made for her. So he's buried in Bonanza. Yep. And Lizzie and her two husbands are buried now in what is called the Boot Hill Cemetery outside of Bonanza. So 8 miles north of a little tiny village called Sunbeam.
Yeah.
So, of course, there was speculation. There was a story that was run in a newspaper out of California. And the newspaper said, a Bonanza City letter on the 11th of the following, last Sunday, one of the demi-monde, I don't know what that means, by the name of Lizzie King was married to a Mr. Hawthorne, recently from the Wood River County, where he had sold a mine. And this was something we didn't know about Mr. Hawthorne until we found this article.
Right.
He sold a mine for several $1,000s, then showed up into town and met Miss Lizzie, who immediately married him.
Uh-huh. Let me tell you what demi-monde means real quick.
Yes.
It is it's a French word, 19th century French word that means the class of women considered to be of doubtful morality and social standing.
Oh,
Bit of a slight there, California newspaper.
wow. Poor Lizzie. Well, it seems as though she didn't have a super good reputation. But
yeah.
So Mr. Hawthorne must have come to town with a fair amount of money in his pocket. Yep. So they got married. Well, after they got married, the story goes, and this reads like a tabloid, honestly.
It really does. It's pretty great.
After the marriage, it was found that he had no money. So the couple had been quarreling ever since, until today, culminated in his shooting her dead and then killing himself. No one witnessed the shooting. They were in the bedroom together, but the shots were heard by parties who rushed in and found them both lying side by side, the revolver near the man's hand. They were both killed almost instantly. So that was in a newspaper out of California, which is pretty interesting. But the thing that you have to know about that is that that story is nowhere in the archives, in the archives of this case, in all of the stuff that's posted about this case from the Forest Service or from the BLM that manages the land. No one tells this story. This is the only place that we have seen this is from this old old newspaper out of Fresno, California.
Yeah, and it's not true. That's not how it happened at all.
No,
No,
sure
I don't
doesn't seem to
resonate
be.
with the description of this, of the way that they were killed in any way.
Yeah. Yeah. But interesting that the news of it made it to California, and that's what they said about it.
Well, and as per usual, the news got it wrong.
Right?
Man, that happens a lot. We've
Why does
seen
this
that happen
always
in the
happen?
Dave Valvalo case.
Yeah. So at the site of Boot Hill Cemetery, there is a posted story about Lizzie King, and I'm going to share that. This is basically what you guys have already heard, but this is what is said by the Forest Service and the BLM that manage this land, Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah.
You know, the different BLM. Okay.
And that's super confusing when you live somewhere like this where the
Mhm.
BLM manages federal forest land. That means Bureau of Land Management.
Uh-huh.
And Black Lives Matter is also called BLM. And so we've
It's
seen
created some
comic
confusion.
about it here.
People, I've heard people here be like, "Why is the BLM protesting? I don't understand." I'm like, different BLM, honey.
Yeah.
Okay. Lizzie
Black
and
Lives
Richard,
Matter, by the way.
yes. Lizzie and Richard King lived in Bonanza, where Richard worked in real estate. A heated argument with a business partner left Richard dead and Lizzie alone. Lizzie and close friend Charles Franklin purchased this gravesite for Richard and two more next to it, presumably for themselves. Soon, Charles and Lizzie began courting, and a wedding seemed imminent. To everyone's surprise, Lizzie married Robert Hawthorne, a newcomer to Bonanza. 6 days later, both were found shot to death. Soon after, Franklin left the area for a secluded cabin near Stanley, where years later he was discovered dead. Clutched in his hand was a locket which held the picture of Lizzie King. Due to the mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of Lizzie King, Bonanza residents chose to bury their loved ones elsewhere, leaving Lizzie and her new husbands alone on Boot Hill. So, a little different than the story goes, as far as, the Kings not being allowed to be buried in the Bonanza cemetery. But at any rate, they were ostracized. So,
Mm-hmm.
and as we know, she was, considered to be some kind of loose woman of ill repute or something. So,
Diamond. Diamond.
so that's how the story reads. So, 140 years ago, what do you think happened?
I have no doubt at all that Charles killed them both. He did not go there intending to kill Lizzie. That was not his intention at all. He wanted to kill the new husband and get him out of the way. And in the fray, he accidentally killed them both. It broke his heart. That's why, he moved off to live in a cabin. And, his grief at her death was absolutely genuine because he didn't mean to kill her. She got in the way, got in the middle of the fight, and he ended up killing them both unintentionally. But he was just blinded with grief when she married this other man, and he could not understand what was happening. He just still didn't get it that she had just screwed with him, and
Mhm.
he was desperate to get her back. And so he did go there to kill the husband in order to try to stake his claim on her. Basically, you got to remember this time frame that women did not have any friggin' rights and didn't have any rights at
Right.
all, and were treated like property. And
Yeah.
so in his mind, she owed him. He owned her for the things that he had done for her. And
Mhm.
so he was going to go kill this guy and make it right. And she got involved because she was a real spitfire and, obviously was not following society's norms for women already.
Yeah.
And she wasn't putting up with this because she did not want
Yeah.
to be with him. She used him and, didn't realize what she'd gotten herself into. He was more dangerous than she realized and more attached to her than she realized. And in the midst of that, tried to defend her new husband and was killed along with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have
Yeah.
no doubt of that. This was most definitely not a murder-suicide. I do not get that energy around it at all. And
Mm-mm.
the energy of the grief and the regret on Charles's part is so heavy. You can feel it all around it that
Yeah.
he messed up big time.
Yeah.
But he definitely did kill them both. I think it's interesting that, like, that wasn't the story when he disappeared and moved off into the woods not long after all this happened, that,
Right.
people were, whoa, hold the phone, like maybe the guy
Right.
madly in love with her that got jilted might have had something to do with this, but he definitely did.
Well, there really wasn't much for law enforcement.
No, there wasn't. That's true. I mean, they
And
pretty much
so,
just policed themselves and mostly did it
mhm.
by killing each other.
Well, and because she had the reputation she did, it really makes me wonder if the people in town just kind of went, huh, well, there you have it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think they expected her to meet a bad end anyway because of the things she'd done in the past, and, I feel like, just the whole burying them way up the hill from the rest of them. I mean, it literally is up a hill, like, quite a
Oh,
ways up a
yeah.
hill from the Bonanza cemetery,
Hmm.
and I do feel like it was a just, out of sight, out of mind. We're not gonna speak of this again kinda situation.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And it makes me wonder if some of them really did suspect Charles, but just didn't really care, you
Yeah,
know?
I get that impression that, people didn't care so much about this because they'd brought this, criminal stuff to their town to begin with, and they just didn't
Hmm.
really care. Nobody cared.
One of the things I had tried
I mean,
to,
he really died of a broken heart. I mean, he ate himself
yeah,
alive from the inside out for what he'd done.
yeah, 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 poor Charles, really.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
I
Oh, I
mean,
mean, he owned a hotel. He was living in a boom town, he probably had life in the palm of his hand in a
mhm.
lot of ways until Lizzie came to town.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's exactly true.
I had puzzled over the business partner that killed her husband, that killed Richard King. There's absolutely no information about him whatsoever, which also made me wonder, was he prosecuted? I'm guessing no. I'll bet he
Yeah.
just left town.
Shady bunch of shady dealings there. I feel like
Yeah.
with Richard King, he was very shady, just
Mhm.
like his wife was very shady, and
Mhm.
that it was seen as a, well, he got what he deserved kind of a situation because he
Yeah.
was, trying to, fraud this guy and just I think for the most part, people just really chose not to get involved in situations like that because you see the outcome. It's like, who are you gonna call to help you? Clearly, there
Right.
wasn't anybody.
There's no one.
And
Yeah.
so the plan was, we're gonna stay as far away from this as we can, which they literally did by burying them in a different cemetery.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, so wild. So
Yeah,
wild. So that is the tale of Lizzie King.
very interesting. The visiting the cemetery was so cool.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful place. It literally is just out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
You'll see with the pictures and the video and stuff we have that,
Mhm.
you just drive up a dirt road and suddenly there's this little fenced in area,
Mhm.
and that's how all the cemeteries are up there.
Mhm.
All of these little fenced in places, and there'll be 2 or 3 graves or maybe even only 1 inside the fence.
Yeah. Well, and there were some hunters camped not far from there,
Yeah,
and they were grazing their horses right out in that area. So when we pulled up there, there was a whole herd of horses, like 100 yards away maybe from
yeah,
the gravesite, and they were really curious about what we were doing. Some of them got fairly close. They were wearing bells,
yeah.
and I was so mystified by the horses up there too. It was really cool.
It was, yeah, they were wearing these big cowbells and they'd clang as they were walking
Yeah.
so that the hunters could find them. But they
Mhm.
kept getting closer and closer to us, like they were really wondering what we were doing.
Well, Mars kept calling them in, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"You don't need these horses, like, you can't pet them, you
Well, and they
know?"
had mules too, horses and mules. I'm sure they'd been packing into the mountains hunting and
Mhm, there
stuff.
were mules too. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure yeah, they were probably, yeah, going way out deep into the woods there, and yeah, wow. Very rural and remote, but
Yeah.
anyway, well, thank you for that. That was great. That's the story of our hero, I guess, Lizzie King or something.
Raymond, Lizzie King. I don't know. I don't really like the word because it really what it means is this is a woman who didn't follow society's rules.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's a real slight, even though she clearly had a lot more control over her life and had taken more control over her life than a lot of women did at that time. And she
Yeah.
was living in a tremendously dangerous place for women.
Mm.
And I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
had to do whatever necessary to protect herself.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, and whoever worked at her establishments, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was not a safe time, and to be a woman who owned, a business,
Mhm.
which you gotta understand the Old West, that was actually not that uncommon.
No,
Because there weren't that many people, and women were pretty revered because there were always way more men than women in any
than women.
situation. So women, had more rights and were, allowed more things in the Old West
Mhm.
than you would say at the same time frame in the East.
Oh, definitely. I mean, technically, at that time, women couldn't own property or own businesses
Yeah.
without a man attached to it, you know? But
Yeah.
yeah, the Old West had a little different attitude towards that.
Mhm.
Yeah, because of the way things were, but
Yeah.
so we'll never know what happened to the dance hall, the hotel, the saloon. Probably somebody. They fell into someone else's hands, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
at least
Uh,
for a time, probably still operated.
I would
But they're
imagine so. They
all
were very
gone now.
necessary. Yeah, they are
Yeah.
all gone now, but yeah, they were very necessary at that time.
Oh, definitely. Yep. All righty. Well, there you have it. So we'll be back this week on Wednesday night for our case updates. There's some really interesting case updates this week that will probably, well, frankly, just piss you off if you're
Mhm.
anything like us.
Yeah.
But and then of course we'll be back on Thursday night for the Psychic Hour with the Psychic Sisters. And those are both live streams that happen right around 8 p.m. Mountain Time
Mhm.
uh,
And they're
on
on YouTube.
YouTube and on Facebook. Yep.
Yeah.
So you can look for those there. Also, we have I almost called it a mic drop, which is wrong. We have a merch drop coming this week. So
Yes.
watch for that. We finally have some merch. We have t-shirts coming this week. So we
Woo-hoo.
will make you guys aware of them. We're going to be selling them through our Etsy store, but those are coming. So we're very excited about that
Mhm.
too. So lots of good stuff going on this week.
Yeah. Well, and we also have Chad Daybell has, court on the 24th,
Yeah. Yep.
so
Coming
we'll have
right up.
on that as well, so lots of
Yep.
good stuff coming.
Yeah. Busy, busy week for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I actually drove past Chad Daybell's house this morning, and that little memorial that's been set up on the other side of the road from him has sure
Mhm.
grown. There's a lot of stuff over there.
Yeah.
It's really colorful and bright and pretty, and
That's
it's
good.
nice. I'm glad it's there. Yeah. All righty. Well, and of course, if you're on Patreon, watch for a new episode dropping this week just for our patrons too, because that's
Yes.
coming as well. So
We have some more.
lots of good stuff. Yeah. All righty. Well, you guys, you have been listening to the Psychic Sisters here with True Crime Paranormal. Thanks so much for being here, you guys. Take care and have a good one.
Bye, guys.